to me, social media is an oxymoron because it's not necessarily social. You're, behind a screen or you're on a keyboard. You're not necessarily, having that human to human connection with people. And so I feel that's what's escaping our society today. So that's what I'm rebelling against. Is I'm trying to build those human to human connections and actually build, communities, as opposed to, being behind a screen or on a keyboard. There's a lot of things that we as human beings wouldn't do face to face, wouldn't say face to face. And that face, a lot of people are not looking each other in the eye anymore. So I'm rebelling against that. I go to the airport now, and if I'm looking at you, I'm gonna keep looking at you. I'm not gonna look away. We're gonna do a stare down game because a lot of people don't look each other in the eye anymore.
Thank you so much for being here and leaning into your fatherhood role. 3 nuggets that hit me from my conversation with Ron today are: 1, how to handle adversity and allow your kids to see you process it. 2, how to be emotionally stable in your home. And 3, thoughts on how to discipline your kiddos. Welcome to Fatherhood Field Notes podcast, where I interview incredible fathers, gaining wisdom from their stories for both you and I to grow in our own craft. I'm your guide, Ned Shout, father to 5 kiddos, currently ages 11 to 18, and husband to my rad wife, Sarah, working on our 20th year of marriage. So yeah, my friend, I'm in the thick of it. I'm in it with you, and I'm working daily to rebel against the low expectations our culture sets for fathers. I want to live in and create a world where fathers know who they are as they're showing up for their families. You and I have such an incredible opportunity. And that's an opportunity to impact our world through the way we embrace our fatherhood role. This episode is brought to you by the Adventure of Fatherhood, helping men discover their powerful fatherhood role and build their fatherhood skills. When I think of the role of the father, I really lean into this idea that we get to serve, guide, provide, protect, and of course, find joy and have fun in the messiness of it all. Today's guest is my friend, Ron Naulls. I learned so much. I love his energy. Enjoy meeting my friend, Ron. It's good to meet you finally. How are you today?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me, Ned. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, man. I mean, just even before we hit record, we're talking for a few minutes. I just love your passion for fatherhood. It's so important for our world. Now, Matt Drinkon, this guy from the Eternal podcast, from Front Row Dads, I've known him for a few years. He's got so much freaking energy. It's crazy. I made the comment once that he's got Red Bull running through his veins. And then, okay, when I think about this guy, we shared a room with a couple dudes at this event one time, and I woke up to some sort of sound at like 4 a.m. I mean, it might have even been like just under like 3:58. And I look up and there's this tall white man pumping his fist in the air, and he didn't have headphones in. He put it in for all of us. It was AC/DC Thunderstruck. And that's what this dude is, pacing back and forth in the room, saying his morning affirmations, just going wild. And so now when I hear that song, I just think Matt Drinkon. Now, Matt Drinkon connected us, and I want to know, when asked, hey, who's a good father you'd recommend for the show? He's like, Ron, you got to have Ron on. Why do you think that your name would come to his mind when thinking about a good father?
Just the adversity that I've been through, and that my own kids witnessed, to be able to traverse through that adversity with your kids watching, I feel is the reason why Mr. Matt Drinkon was like, you know what, you need to interview this father. There's a lots of fathers out there who either like to hide or shield their adversity from their family. But mine, as you'll probably soon find out, it wasn't something that could really be shielded. It was very public. And so to be able to put that out there in front of my kids and guide our family through that adversity, that's what I say, why Matt Drinkon was like, you got to have this father on your podcast. So it's a pleasure and a blessing to be here, Ned. Thank you for having me.
Love it. All right. Well, we'll get into that adversity in a little bit. I got a few questions right out the gate for you. Ron, how old do you find yourself today?
Oh man, I feel like I'm in my early 30s, maybe late 20s. I'm definitely older than that, of course. But like Matt, I tend to operate at a high level. I hear
Mm,
people say that I have a lot of energy, and I kind of bounce around. As you know, I'm standing, in front of my camera right now because I don't like to sit down. I feel very antsy in a chair. I was one of those kids that got sent to the principal's office all the time because I couldn't be still.
yeah.
Maybe that OCD, ACD, whatever you want to call the alphabet soup. But that's, my energy level. I can totally match Matt.
Well, I can see it because as soon as I told you I was going to hit record, you're standing there, right? I'm standing, but you kind of like did this like little move around the desk, like you're about to jump in a boxing ring, like you're ready to go. Like turn it on, dude. Let's get this going. So I love it. Ron, how many years you been married?
I've been married 23 years, man.
Dude, that's what's
23
up.
blessed, faithful, even some hardship time
Yeah.
years. But man, we're still together, and I'm so thankful
Yes.
for that woman. So grateful for her. And then just to let you land on a little secret for Valentine's Day,
Mm.
those little composition books,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
hundreds of pages. I started writing this composition book. I call it the grateful. What am I grateful for my wife?
Mm.
And for I want to say it was like maybe 7 or 8 months. Every day I would write in there, what I'm grateful for my wife, and I just gave it to her for Valentine's Day this
That's what's
past
up.
February. So I got the idea from another podcast. I think it was the Zig Ziglar's podcast. The host on there had another
That's
guest
cool.
on and gave that idea. And so, yeah, 23 years. And man,
Wow.
that woman, who she's the reason why I'm here today. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's up, man. That's incredible. And how many kiddos do you guys have?
Seven.
Smart. Smart.
Seven.
What's the youngest and what's the oldest?
The oldest is 22. The youngest is 7. 6 girls, 1 boy. Ned was not
Woo!
planned, and definitely wasn't in my 20s thinking, oh, I'm gonna have this huge family. It was like, you know what, the boy and the girl, and I'm straight.
Yeah.
But I tell everyone, between you and I, and let's keep this a secret, the woman wouldn't leave me alone.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny, dude. So I've got 5 kids, 1 boy and 4 girls. So
Oh.
so yeah, I'm a little behind you, but similar. And mine are 11 to 18. So
Mm.
we got twins in there. But dude, love it, man. Big family, fighting for marriage, sticking it out, dude. What an incredible example. And then, where does your family reside? Where do you guys do life?
So we do life in Southern California.
Okay.
And we every Sunday we try. Of course, we go to church. We try to do something as a family together after church. So that's even with my oldest kids, I got two in college. One was going to Arizona State, and for her last year as a senior, she's able to do most of her classes remotely. So
Mm,
she's living here in SoCal.
nice.
But for 3 agonizing years, Ned, I was like, oh man, bring my baby back home,
Hmm.
my oldest one. But going back to your question, we do everything here in the beautiful sunny SoCal. We're trying to plan to go to Universal Studios here in the next couple weeks. It's just a matter of when everyone's schedules align. Let me tell you.
Shoot, man. Yeah, we got with the 5, it's like, dude, jockeying to get us all to have like a family meeting or family connection. It takes work to do so. Usually somebody misses out on something, but hey, we got to fight for those moments.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what is it that you do to provide value out in the world and feed the family?
Great question. So I serve as an attorney. I don't, say that I work as an attorney
Mm,
or that's my job. I like to serve, and that's whether it be family law clients, for families just like you and myself, civil areas of law where I also serve. In where people aren't having some issues with maybe their business or some landlord tenant issues. I also serve businesses because I feel in the extensive area of corporate law that I've been in and had my feet in the last 2 decades, been able to serve in those areas and capacities as well. So serve as an attorney in those 3 different areas of law.
Love it, man. Love it. And then if you were to describe the role of the father, what would you describe that as?
Man, the role of the father is to set the tone of the family. When it comes to your spirituality, when it comes to your physicality, when it comes to your emotional stability, you set the tone for your family, because your kids are watching. Are you the one that's, working out all the time and taking care of your body? Are you the one that's, waking up and going to church every Sunday? Are you the one that when the car cuts in front of you, you're cussing and honking and so that emotional, that spiritual, even that physical, you're setting the tone for your family. So that to me is the epitome, the importance of fathers, the role in the family.
Yeah. Okay. So 2 I want to just kind of grab at and ask about is emotional stability. Key. Love it. Yes. What is some actual practices that you do or don't do to keep yourself overall emotionally stable as a father to 7 kids and married for 23 years?
So one of the things that I definitely do, because I feel when it comes to your emotions, you have to be physically fit in order to be mentally fit. So, for example, as an attorney, you don't have people that come to you with good days. As an attorney, people come to you with problems. And when you have your large family, it's always problems. And when you don't have an outlet physically to be able to deal with those problems, then that's when your mental imbalance. I noticed there was one period of my life where I wasn't working out and being physically fit, just starting to look like a muffin top. That's when your belt starts hanging over your belly starts hanging over your belt line. And I just noticed that I wasn't dealing with things in an effective way. So being able to work out physically in order to get myself mentally balanced, that was definitely important for me. But also to have those conversations with my wife. The woman brings a completely different perspective than a man when it comes to empathy and compassion. I know sometimes I think of myself as this empathetic person and this compassionate person. I love God and I serve everyone. But there's that, they say men are from Mars, women are from Venus for a specific reason. Because even just recently, there was something that my wife pointed out to me, how I was having a conversation with my daughter. We come from the father perspective, and hey, this is X, Y, and Z, and my wife is like, probably shouldn't talk to you about that. And I'm like, well, why? This is my take, and as the spiritual leader of our family, and as a father and the role, this is how it should. Well, your approach just isn't that's not the right way to approach it with a girl or with women. I'm like, okay, all right. Well, how are you supposed to approach it? And then she just gives this completely, different perspective on something and approach from even a more compassionate and empathetic way from the way that a woman thinks. That to me was eye opening. And still to this day, after 23 years, like, man, you would think that I've got that dialed in, but I just to answer your question, that's something that I've noticed with being able to deal with my own family and mentally and emotionally, just having that physical outlet, that physical outlet, working out, and being able to have someone to give you a completely different perspective. Because, we as males, we always think, my way or the highway, I know the right way, or, I could Google it and figure it out. No, that doesn't work. You got to have that different perspective, especially someone that you're really, really close with, like your wife.
Yeah, that's so good. Real quick in a sentence or two, what is your workout routine? You working out in the morning? You working out in the evening? You working out 3 days a week, 5 days a week? What's that look like?
So 5 days a week. I treat my physical workouts like work because I work Monday through Friday.
Yep.
So my physical workouts Monday through Friday. Like Matt, I get up at 4 a.m. My wife still hates it to this day. But right when that alarm goes off, I jump up, and that's 3 hours between 4 and 7. Yeah, 4 and 7 is when I spiritually connect with my Lord, and then read some couple things, write, because I feel it's important for us men to be able to write and journal, because that's when you're taking thoughts and things that are in your head, and once you transfer it to paper and pen, it just gets everything else going and flowing as far as your getting ready for your day, if you will. But then after that, the workout, sticking the AirPods in the ear, and just throwing things around for at least 40 minutes, 40 minutes to 50 minutes, Monday through Friday, and then Saturday, Sunday is R&R.
Love it. And the reason why I asked is, I mean, I was just having a conversation with a dude yesterday about his fitness, and he's like, I got 5 kids, I don't have time. And your answer was really a strong answer, is that's not an option. I treat it like work. And in that sense, it's not that you don't enjoy it, right? But
No.
you look at it as just as necessary as I got to answer these emails, or I got to go to this meeting. And the fruit, right? The fruit is there, right?
Yes.
Is like you show up with more energy, you show up. And I love the kind of the flow. So I wrote this down. If I want to be emotionally fit or mentally fit, first I got to be physically fit. And it's kind of this cycle, right? It's like, well, which one do I start with? Is it my mindset? Is it whatever? It's like, just do the freaking work, and you're going to notice this cycle. So it's physically fit, I'll be mentally fit, I'll be emotionally fit, and then the cycle continues.
Yes.
And so I love that you said you treat it like work, and you make it a
Yes.
priority, right?
Yep.
It's good.
Yep. Because we all get the same hours in a day. I hear the same thing from my buddies that I'm nudging them, and now they're starting to see, the difference and the actual results. Every single human being on this earth, I say the billionaires, the Elon Musk, the Bill Gates, every single person on this earth gets 24 hours a day. So what do you do with your 24 hours a day? So to me, it's not an excuse when you say, I don't have time, because if you want to do X, Y, and Z, you find the time. I say this to my kids, when they want to go to Starbucks before school, man, I can't get them to get up and go to school on time. But hey, if we want to get a treat before school, man, they're up and ready.
There. Yeah.
Yes. So it's not about if you don't have time. It's we all get the same days, 24 hours in a week or in a day, 7 days a week. So it's, make the time.
Yeah.
And when you make the time and you're disciplined, because it's all about self-discipline too. So you're training yourself to not only make time, but you're training yourself to be self-disciplined. So when you encounter those things in your work, or when you encounter those things with your family, when you're being that leader with your kids, they're seeing that self-discipline, they pick up on it, and then it translates to them being self-disciplined as well, because it's like, oh, if my dad is doing it, then I should do it as well.
In a couple sentences, how does nutrition fit into this for you?
Great question. Nutrition is, of course, it adds to this too. So I'm a pescatarian, so I don't eat meat except fish. That's where I get my protein from. I've noticed just changing my diet. I think I changed my diet, I want to say 6 or 7 years ago. I used to make fun of vegan people and people that didn't eat meat. Like, what are you, crazy? Like, what? But when I started to see what they put in meat, as far as the preservatives and things that weren't available to us human beings before the refrigerator. So doing my own little research and trying to learn, how we evolved as humans and how we consume food, and also in areas of the world, like the Mediterranean areas where people live to be, 100 all the time. And I'm like,
Mm.
what is going on? And it's all about the diet. It's what they're eating. They're eating, plants and lentils and fish. They're not eating the same things like, chicken and beef and, all the luxuries that we get here in the United States. So once I cut all of that out, I noticed that I wasn't tired as often, because I
Mm.
used to be waking up in the morning just groggy, and you're like, man, you can barely get out of that rut. And once I changed my diet, it was instant. So yeah, definitely important when it comes to diet.
Yeah. So, and what I love about it is not necessarily like, do you want to be, paleo or keto or carnivore or pescatarian, but to have intentionality around
Mm,
it. Right.
yep.
And so your answer was quick and on par. And that's just another area that I see dudes. I don't have time, so I'm crushing just dog crap food all day. And the reason why you're tired, the reason why you don't have time, the reason why you're exhausted is because you're not taking care of that first and foremost gift God gave you, and that's your body.
Yes.
Something we've been talking about more in the home is like, eat the food that God made, right? You want to
Yep.
perform
Yep.
well, eat the food God made.
Yep.
Dude, super cool. Okay, let's talk about adversity. So, clearly you've got a positivity about you. You've got I'm excited to show up. I'm excited for the day. When I think about adversity, right, it carries like, man, some stuff happened. So talk to me about the adversity that hit you, how you got through it, and then the benefits of adversity.
Man. So the adversity that hit me, Ned, was being raided by the federal government. I mean, like FBI, DEA, you know, IRS. I didn't even know that IRS agents had guns, when I was
Mm,
raided. And the reason why I was raided is because I opened a medical marijuana dispensary almost 16 years ago. Um, Family member had cancer, doing some research and found out that cannabis was a great way for people that get chemo treatment, um, and chemotherapy, to be able to eat. Because when you get chemo, of course, it makes it much more difficult for you to eat. It makes more difficult to keep things down when you do eat. And learned and discovered that cannabis was one of the ways that cancer patients are able to not only eat but to keep the food down. So upon discovering that, my philanthropic side was like, oh, why can't we do this in my community where I live? Because I would see people having to go all the way to LA or
mm,
to San Francisco in order to go to these legal cannabis shops. So I decided, if no one else was going to do it in my community, why can't I? And a year later after that was raided by the federal government. Long story short, when I was raided, everything was taken from me and my family. This was that point in adversity where my wife was going to leave us or leave me, because she was arrested, and arrested for child endangerment because of the cannabis
oh
that we had in
man,
our home. And our kids were taken into child protective services. We had 3 at the time.
so
Um,
heavy.
so what transitioned from that was that we followed the state laws and we did what we were supposed to. And it also pushed me to go into law school because I didn't have an attorney. I couldn't afford an attorney because our assets were forfeited: houses, cars, and money. We were essentially, broke. Couldn't even open up a bank account, man. I went to Bank of America to open up a bank account because all of our banks were closed and confiscated and forfeited. And Bank of America is like, yeah, sorry, we can't open an account for you.
Wow.
So literally starting from scratch. And so facing 40 years in prison, didn't know what to do. I didn't want to lose my family. I didn't want to just cop a plea because my public defender back then, I call it a public pretender because I was going through the prison
Mm,
system, the Federal Bureau of Prisons at the time. You should just take a plea. You're going to go to prison. The feds have all
whoa.
this evidence against you, so you should just cop a plea. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to cop a plea for 15 years. If you're not going to help me, you're just going to tell me to go take a plea. I'm going to figure out how to fight this myself. So I enrolled in law school. Didn't even think that I would get accepted into law school, Ned, because I was under house arrest at the time. But there was this one law school that took a chance on me, and that's how God works. He
Wow.
creates these miracles for you, and he opens these doors that you would think are not even possible. Got into law school and was learning how to write a motion, learning how to defend my case. And then the administration change. We went from the Bush administration when I was rated to the Obama administration. And the Obama administration came out with this memo with the Department of Justice that said that if you did everything you were supposed to do under state law, which under California it was the Compassionate Use Act that we followed under state law, then they weren't going to prosecute. Well, the federal government didn't want to just allow me to go free, if you will. They wanted to get a pound of flesh. It's like we spent all these millions of dollars to investigate and prosecute you. So we're just not going to say, oh, you know what, we'll just let you go. So I filed or I copped a plea to filing a false tax return, because under IRS section codes, a illegal business under federal law, which medical cannabis is still illegal under federal law. If you took any deductions for a business, you can't do that under IRS section, what they call IRS section 280E. So long story short, I took a plea on that felony charge for filing a false tax return, and was given 6 months house arrest, and was able to still go to law school. But I didn't think that I was going to become an attorney. I figured, with a moral turpitude crime, which is, filing a false tax return is moral turpitude, that I would never even become a lawyer. So fast forward, I graduated from law school, didn't plan on going to law school or becoming a lawyer. But it was my oldest daughter at the time that pushed me and was like, Dad, you should, if anyone else was in your position, you should sit for the bar exam. I'm like, well, why would I sit for the bar exam? Well, Dad, you always taught us to never quit when we start. Dang. Okay.
How old was she at the time?
She was 14.
Wow. That's what's
14.
up. Yep. Love it.
14 at the time. So I sat for the bar exam, Ned, and I passed. And I was like, oh, okay. Didn't expect that. And so then the next phase of that was to go in front of what's called the Moral Character Committee for the state of California. And the Moral Character Committee, they're the ones that decide whether or not you get a law license. I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to waste my time going in front of the Moral Character Committee, because why would they give a convicted felon a law license? That just doesn't happen. No convicted felon gets a law license. It's unheard of. Again, my daughter pushes me to go and apply for my law license. I apply for my law license, Ned. I go in front of the Moral Character Committee, and the first thing they say is, you thought you could sell dope and get away with it. No, I didn't. Well, did you give it away? No, it was a donation. It was legal under state law. Well, you know what? You sold dope and you thought you can get away with it. So I didn't get my law license. They denied me. Then in 2016, what a law passed in California called Proposition 64, which legalized recreational cannabis. So after that law passed, again, my family nudged me to, with everything, there's dispensaries everywhere now. You can go buy it legally. Why don't you apply for your law license again? I'm like, you know what? Okay, all right. You know what? We'll see if the tone changes. I applied for my law license a second time, 2 years after I was denied. I go in front of the Moral Character Committee, and one of the first things I heard was one of the moral character attorneys asked me, so what are you going to do after you get your law license?
What?
Did you just say, what am I going to do after I get my law license? Like, that to me, it was like, that means you're going to get your law license.
Yeah.
And so that's the adversity, going from almost being divorced from my wife because, she said, you're the reason why my kids were taken away. They were in CPS. We were able to get them back, of course, but, it really affected our family. And then going to law school, getting accepted into law school, passing the bar exam, and then getting my law license.
Yeah, that's some heavy adversity. I got a couple questions for you around it. What was the process? What did it look like for you to create the healing between you and your wife for, the what I would suspect to be a bit of a traumatic situation with the kids being taken, her being arrested? You were fighting for what mattered, but what did that healing process between you and her look like? And I want to ask it in this kind of like this sense or tone behind it is, I think there's a lot of couples, a lot of marriages where there's healing that needs to take place, and maybe they haven't divorced, but they just haven't leaned into the healing because the dad's not setting the tone, like you said at the beginning. And so they're just kind of like doing life.
Hmm.
And I want the dude to hear like obvious, like that's a very obvious like milestone moment. And maybe some guys don't have that milestone moment, but they're still just like, there's healing that needs to take place. So from that vein, what would you kind of say your healing process look like, and what would a dad or husband do to step into that with his own wife?
You know what? I hate to be what they call a Bible thumper, Ned, but it was really growing that relationship with my Lord. Because at that point in time, when we were going through it, you know what? I would call myself a Christian and I would go to church, not every Sunday, but I was going through the motions. I
Yeah.
wasn't really building that relationship with God. But once I was like, you know what? I'm determined, I'm focused, and I want to have a strong relationship with God, because why am I going through this? What is going on? And through that example of me building a relationship with God, going to church, serving in the church, it just started that. It wasn't overnight. It wasn't even in a year. It was just staying committed and staying focused on building that spiritual relationship with God. And then his love for me just it permeated
Mm.
throughout my family, and we all would serve together. My kids would serve in the youth group, and so we just noticed this tremendous outpouring of support from friends and family within the church, from our own spiritual growth as a family. um, that I know for a fact that was a huge factor in the healing process,
Mm.
and what got us over that hump, and that's what we still focus on to this day.
That's beautiful. So you had 3 kids at the time. This is 16 years ago. What was that next hurdle like, to either decide? I mean, some of us decide to have another kid and sometimes they just show up. But to go, like to have that next kid, was there any kind, I guess to go from 3 kids to 7, everything has impact. So any thoughts around that? Like, okay, we're going to keep growing this family. We're going to keep digging into family. What comes to
Oh
mind?
man, my maybe it was that message from God that says, you know what, when you have kids, it brings your family closer together. Because
Yeah.
when I found out my wife was pregnant with the fourth child, Ned, I was on house arrest. I was
Dang.
facing 40 years, and there was people in our family saying, "Why are you having another kid when you
Mm,
won't be around?"
mm,
That's just stupid. Like, that just doesn't make sense. And then your wife is going to be out on, award of the state, and getting food stamps, or collecting some type of assistance from the state, because you're going to be gone. Because I was the main breadwinner for our
yeah.
family at the time. So you know what, we said, whenever we have kids, it helped us to, because that first year, you got the newborn, and you're just like all dialed in,
Yeah.
because that's the formative years, and so you want to make sure you're not doing anything to like screw up their mind, or their body and soul in that first whole year. And it just brings our family so much closer together, to where in 2010, because our fourth child was born in 2009. In 2010 was when I accepted my plea deal,
Mm,
and that's when the chains were released, that I wasn't looking at prison time, and that we
mm,
we wouldn't be facing any more criminal indictments, if you will. And our blessing in disguise was our fourth child, and it was just like a miracle that just kind of just helped us to get through that whole adversity, on top of our spiritual relationship with God. So excellent question. And that was definitely a lot of pressures, and a lot of naysayers that were
yeah.
in our heads at the time. But wow. And now she's in high school.
Dude, that's wild. So your 14-year-old, the one who nudged you to be a lawyer, how old is she today?
She's 22.
If we had her on the podcast with us right now and we said, hey, what's her name?
Aaliyah.
Aaliyah. So we said, hey, Aaliyah, whatever. Thanks for being on here. Good to meet you, blah, blah, blah. Tell me about the adversity you saw. Like what did you learn from watching your dad go through that? Because this wasn't no short window, right? She grew up a good portion kind of seeing this play out. What would she tell us shaped the woman that she is now through seeing this happen?
Mm. I would say she would tell you that she learned from me to not depend on other people, because as a lot of young women, they
Mm,
feel as if they need a man to help them through
mm,
anything and everything. And for her, it's, I learned from my dad to stand on my own too. Because that's just the way that she is. That her mindset.
independent girl.
She's got her own. She's very independent, very independent. So independent to the point where she thinks that she's, the reason why she doesn't date many guys nowadays, because they don't stack up to her level, if you will.
Oh,
So she's like,
good.
my dad set the bar, and
Yeah.
the bar is just this high. So
Yeah.
I know that's what she would say about me.
So let me ask this, because I know the tone isn't that you don't um you need other people, or that you don't look for support, or that you're prideful, but there's a sense of responsibility, right?
Yes.
And I just wanted to be clear for dudes to hear this is, sounds like she saw you take responsibility. One,
Mm.
not run, not roll over and be like, well, I guess this is what the public pretender told me to do. But take responsibility. When and
Yes.
so that word hit you for a minute. What does that mean to take responsibility to you and to teach that to your kids?
You know what, it means to not shirk your
Mm,
responsibilities,
mm,
and that discipline. I think that's kind of lacking, what I say Generation Z, because when I hear my daughters talk about her friends or what they're doing, it's, the lack of looking someone in the eye. It's,
yeah.
talking and mumbling, and and being able to just step up to the plate and take responsibility, or shirking that responsibility, or that's not me, that's someone else. um, I think that's, what's missing, and what's important. And as you mentioned, yeah, responsibility definitely. And it also feeds other aspects of you as a human being, like I mentioned, that self discipline, and just straight up stepping up to the plate.
Yeah.
And that's, yeah, I think that's critical today, especially for young folks.
So talk about stepping up to the plate and taking responsibility, because it's like nice to say, and it'd be a great t-shirt or whatever post. Um, but a lot of guys, I think, they get up to the plate once and they strike out, or they get beamed by the ball. And it seems as though in your story, you struck seemingly, okay, it seemed like you got beamed by the ball, you struck out a few times, yet you kept getting back up to take responsibility. Where does that conviction of not become a victim come from?
Great question, because you know what, Ned, I played the victim card
Hmm.
off the bat initially, because I was like, I followed the law. I
Yeah,
did
I would
everything
be
I was supposed
pissed.
to. Like,
Yeah,
what, and who, what, when, where, why,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then as I talk to my buddies nowadays, they're like, aren't you upset? There's dispensaries on every
Mm,
corner on the block now. Doesn't it? No, because I'm forging my way in life today. So I
mm-hmm.
don't look back, I look forward. And so, as you mentioned, as it's, yeah, it's a nice saying, and it's nice on a t-shirt, but you know what, there's always that voice. You can call it God, or you can call it your own, um, um, your personal being, something that
Yeah.
tells you, where to navigate, or where things are going in life. And you know what, for me, it's always, instead of, what they say, instead of listening to myself, I talk to myself. Because when you listen to yourself,
Hmm.
you listen to yourself on doing, what, I'm the victim, or this, that, and the other excuses. So instead of listening to myself, I talk to myself. And I think that's what's ultimately important for us as fathers. And instead of listening to that critical, that victim, that the one that, shirk your responsibilities, you know what? Talk to yourself. You know what is this the right path for me? If this doesn't work out, then what's my backup plan? If just in talking to yourself,
I
we
love it,
don't
dude.
seem to do that nowadays. We just seem to be all up in our heads and all up in our minds, and then talking ourselves, into things that we're listening to ourselves in our mind, as opposed to, let me figure this out. Let me talk to myself, write things down, journal. And that to me is the key. When instead of it being a T-shirt or a nice saying, you know what? Stop listening to yourself and start talking to yourself.
So, Ron, what hit me as you're sharing this is, I think a lot of men hear these voices, hear the voice, whatever, the critical that they hear, whether it's a positive, like, hey, you should go do this or consider this, or you suck and whatever. I think we do three things. We tend to just listen, like you said. We tend to go take it to our wife and go, hey, should I do this? Should I do that? Or we go take it to our associations, and maybe we haven't built great associations yet, right? We're with our drinking buddy, and we're like, yo, I was thinking about starting my own business or having another kid or whatever. What? Why did you do that? Your life's already hard. Your wife's already a hag, whatever, right? So we go to these places versus going to ourself and I would say not communicate with God, right? Which is what you talked about. But I mean, to wrestle with the voice, to wrestle with the questions is such an opportunity. Like, we are men, we were able to create, we have incredible power, and we just sit on our hands. I'm not saying don't talk with your wife, because like you already shared, your wife is incredible. But I do think sometimes we put a burden on her that's not her responsibility. She ain't your freaking mom, dudes, right? Like, hey, mom, should I go play with Timmy? Like, there are certain things that you need to wrestle and work through on your own. And then you can go get affirmation, confirmation, connection with your wife. But what comes up for you as I share those things?
That it's not going to be snap, instant. It's not going to be something that you figure out. When you said the right word, Ned, wrestle. And wrestle means there's a tussle, there's a struggle, and it's something that it's going to meander up in there for hours or days on end. But you know what? Instead of trying to put it to the back of your mind, it's really going through exercises in your head to try to wrestle and figure out, okay, what if I do this, then what is my aim? What is my result? What am I shooting for? Because you know what, as you mentioned, should I go hang out with Timmy or should I start this business? Well, is Timmy, is it bringing you up or putting you down? Is he challenging you? When you start that business, what are you going to do? Well, of course, we all want to make money. We want to feed our families, but what are you going to do for your community? What are you going to do to bring value? What are you going to do to serve people? We got this great idea, but how are you going to wrestle with that idea in order to bring it to fruition? And how is it going to be, profitable? How are you going to serve, your community, serve people? Those are the things that we don't necessarily wrestle with, Ned. We just come up with the idea and like, okay, we're off to the races. And it's much more in depth and it's much more involved than that. And I think that's where we're missing or where we're lacking. And again, you can go to your wife and she can, give you a couple, things of input, if you will. But again, they're not our mother. So that's where we have to be leaders and be creative and unlock those juices. Because, it's for some of us, it may be locked and it's going to take some time to unlock it.
Dude. And I'll tell you, man, I feel like I'm tight with God. Like I love God. I love the pursuit of that. And something that I've been doing since January 1st is I set this, I just set my timer for 10 minutes and just shut up, just listen. Yes. And it's hard, dude. It's hard. Listening is hard.
It is.
But I've noticed, like, even this morning, I'm like, set it for 12, like set a little, like I'm enjoying this time. And when I journal afterwards, I feel like there's clarity.
Mm,
And it's not necessarily like, this is what you're supposed to do.
mm.
It's more about, this is who you are. And this is how you can go and be. Like, I want to be Ned. I don't want to do Ned. And
Yes.
that's where I'm at in this listening process and enjoying it.
Yes.
Man, the adversity is key. The adversity is key, and I love that you allowed your kids to see it and that you didn't give up, you didn't quit, you kept fighting. And even there were moments, you said there were moments of victim, but working through that, processing through that. When you think about being a father, you've been a father for quite some time, what's something that you were stuck in your ways on, you were pretty black and white about, but then through the process of being a father and being married, right? Because you have this other human being that thinks and speaks differently than you. Is there anything that comes to mind that you've changed your mind on, or you've loosened up on, or you've shifted your thinking around?
Being the disciplinarian,
Okay.
because I've always felt that it's it's the father's role to be the disciplinarian. I grew up in that household where um, you know mom used to say, wait till your dad gets home. It's like, oh crap, he's gonna break
Yeah.
out the belt. It's the disciplinarian. And so now I've come to, as in my years as a father, to be on an understanding level with my kids, to have conversations with them, even with my 7-year-old, because there's a reason why our kids do things. And if you don't understand why your kids do things, then you're not having a personal relationship with your kids. Because I always felt, well, it's the mom's thing to have that personal relationship and know like all the nooks and crannies of the kids. But you know what, it's not just the mom's job or the mom's role. It's supposed to be both parents. And so knowing that one of my kids is having a mental day, what's going on mentally, instead of, man, take your butt to school. Like, what the heck? I didn't have no mental day. What's going on? My teacher is doing this. I'm embarrassed when my teacher does that. And so it's causing me anxiety to where I don't want to go to school. Or my son, he came home and he's talking about the kids that were not getting along with each other, and one of them is his friend, and so just having a conversation with my kids and trying to understand them on a personal level, instead of me just coming home, hey, I'm bringing home the bacon. Oh, you're a bad. Get her in the room, and that's I've let go of that role, Ned, because that was to me what a father should do, is bring home the bacon, and when mom can't handle the kids, to choke them and wrangle them and bring out the belt. And I grew up with the switch. I remember my mom had me go out cutting the switch off the tree. So I've abandoned those ideas, but I've noticed my kids have really grown from that.
Okay, because that was gonna be my question: is how's it serving you? Like how is that serving? But you said it's growing you. How's your relationship with your kids?
So it's much different than what my first three, because that was kind of the mentality that I had. Yes, the practice round. But even now with my grown kids, I went to, because my oldest daughter, she doesn't stay with us. She has her own place, if you will. And I was talking. She was talking to me about her homework, but I was on my laptop, and so I wasn't paying attention to her. And she was like, "Dad, you're not listening to me." And I was like, "Whoa." She's like, "Yeah, I'm talking to you, and I know you're busy, but you know what? Usually when you talk to me, like, you're listening to me, and I know you're busy with work and everything because you're on your laptop, but this is what's going on, and this is what I'm trying to do." And so for me, it's definitely helped me to be more aware and pay more attention to my kids, and even like when my son came into my office yesterday, he'll come into my office and he'll be like, because I got a trampoline in my office, and so he'll
Nice.
come in the office, he'll start jumping on the trampoline. He's like, Dad, guess what? And I was on my computer at the time, and I was like, turned around, I was like, what's going on, son? And just looking at him and
Mm,
talking to him, for me, I just know that it lets him know that he's got my undivided attention, and we're going to have a conversation. And I'm not just going to push him aside and be like, well, he knows that daddy's working or daddy's busy, because it allows me to connect more on an intimate level with my kids when I look them in the eye, and actually listen to them, and and not just assume that they know daddy's busy, or no, daddy's got to do this, that, and the other, and so they just should accept me as who I am. I've completely abandoned that.
yeah, a lot of thoughts going through my head, but I just want to pull out a couple of pieces. So, my kids are 11 to 18 now. I did spank my kids several times. So I'm not a proponent for or not. Um, as a young father, I do think that there was times that I did it just because I was pissed, right? And I'm trying to end the moment.
Yes.
Then there's other times I could look back and I can go, this was necessary at this moment of time. But as you shared, and as dads are listening to this, depending on the age of their kids, thinking about how they want to, I think, having the conversation with your spouse about this, with your wife, is important, to be on the same page, and then to not just do what your dad did because that's what you know, but to think what you
Mm-hmm.
want. But two things you said that really stuck out to me were, one, there's a reason your kid did what they did. And I think a lot of times, like, even if it's with my wife and my wife says or does something that, like, I take personal offense to, do I really think that she's out to get me? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, not really. And so with our kids, I think that a lot of times when they're growing up, they do something. Now, granted, some, kids will do things they know it's wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you definitely need to create some discipline in those, whatever that looks like. But especially as they get older, it's like, why did you make the decision that you made? Let's talk through that. Let's work through that. And the image I had is, okay, on one hand, what you're sharing is a dad sits down and has a conversation, builds relationship with the kid. Beautiful, right? As long as they're not, I mean, you'll know if they're blowing smoke at you eventually.
Yes.
The other thought that I had is, like, we just got a dog recently, which I'm not really a dog person, but your dog pisses in the house and maybe you spray it in the face with like a water bottle or whatever it is, or you smack
Mm-hmm.
it. Eventually the dog's like, oh shoot, like, I don't want that to happen again. Right. And so they
Yes.
start peeing outside. But sometimes I think that's what we do with our kids. Is like, I
Yes.
can't have a conversation with my dog, so I spray it with water or smack his bottom, whatever it is that you decide to do with your dog. But how often are we just implementing that same thing with our kid? We're just given some sort of shock. We never asked them why they did what they did. And so they just start to go, well, I guess I can't do this thing. But we never actually processed with them why they did the thing. So they're not
Yes.
actually learning. And then the real mind thing that I have with that is, like, as fathers, we don't want to teach our kids just to go out in the world and just be sheep and follow and try not to, like,
Bingo.
and I think
Yes.
that's the thing, is like, if I want my child to critically think, which is what I need them to do to thrive in this world, not just go survive in this world, they've got to
Yes.
critically think, and it comes down to relationship. And so that's your opportunity in the messiness of the day to day. And then last thing, and I'll shut up, is dads, I think sometimes we don't have enough margin in our life to sit down and have the conversation. So we're like,
Yes.
I'm rolling in, I'm tired, I worked hard, I'm bringing home the bacon, so smack ya, don't do it again, and move on. And we just totally missed our opportunity to be a guide, to be a leader, to be a father.
Absolutely. And another
What comes
thing,
up for you?
what comes up for me is, as when we're kids, when we tell our kids not to do something,
Mm-hmm.
don't do that. Um, when I was young, whenever someone told me not to do something, it made me want to do it more.
Right.
That's just the nature of a human being. It's like, you know what? Now that something is scarce to me, I want it even more.
Mm.
And so, from that perspective, I've also learned that when we don't want our kids to do something, it's not that we just tell them not to do something. You know what? As you mentioned, having that margin and being able to explain, to our kids, this is why you shouldn't get a car with a car payment. Like, I'm not going to sit up here and tell you to just not get go get a brand new car, go get that Benz that you want and get a car payment. Like, this is why you should not get a car payment, baby girl, because you're trying to, have your own place. You're trying, you want to do things as an adult. When you have a car payment, you're not going to be able to do X, Y, and Z. You're not going to be able to do this, and then your insurance, you're going to have, crazy insurance because they got to insure this for the lender that you're getting this car for. And then once you have that explanation, that margin to be able to teach your kids, then they start seeing, not only in their own life, but in their friends' life. Well, all my friends have car payments, but they can't do nothing. So that's what I'm learning. And that's one of the things that I'm doing as a father is, not just telling my kids no, but actually sitting down and having that conversation, because I know when I was young, when I was told no, I just wanted it even more.
Yeah, it's good, man, to have a relationship, have a connection with your kids, especially if you want it after they move out, right? That's got to start at, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it's funny, I always bring this up because I really want dads to hear this. When your kid is between like 4 and 9, you just want them to shut up and stop asking questions. It's like, good gosh, I wish you'd stop. And if you teach them, hey, don't ask that, or don't ask me again, or whatever, if you stifle that, then when they're, 13 to 18, you just wish they'd come to you. Yes. But they ain't going to come to you now because you trained them for 5 years not to come to you. Yes. So opening up that conversation when they're young is critical. And then the hope is that in those teen years that you didn't react when they did ask you something, so that then when they're in their early 20s and late 20s and early 30s, they're like, my dad listens to me. He asks me if I want advice, and he shares his own stories or whatever, right? So that I can learn. He lets me learn. Yep. Dude, Ron, we could rap forever about fatherhood and life. This has been so fun, beautiful. Before I ask my last 2 questions, is there anything I didn't ask, anything we didn't touch on, anything you'd want to share to a father from your stories?
You know what? Because we talked about like the importance of that morning routine. There's, and you gave me an excellent recommendation on a book, Big 5 for Life. So for my fathers out there, The Daily Dad by Ryan Holiday. I'm sure you maybe heard this one from being the Father podcast, but for me, man, it's so eye-opening to be able to read something every day about what to do as a dad, how to be a better dad, how to be a better family, individual, and how to contribute to society overall. That, to me, that book is phenomenal. And it also encapsulates, recent events. One of the passages was talking about, when Kobe Bryant passed away, and just some of these, like the pandemic and things like that. So it's a very relevant, for dads today, just to start your morning off right and to navigate life, as a father. I find that an invaluable resource.
Beautiful. Love it. All right, man. So here's my last 2 questions. The first is, we've done this the last hour. It's fatherhood field notes, opening up your life to us. But the mantra is rebel and create. As men, we're warriors. We want to fight. We want to go, rebel. But we don't want to just leave chaos behind us. We want to create something beautiful out of what we're rebelling against. So when you hear that, what's something that you're rebelling against? It could be rebelling against the phone at the dinner table so that we can create great family meals, to I'm rebelling against something in our culture. When you hear that, what's something that you, Ron, are rebelling against, and what do you hope to create out of that rebellion?
So I'm rebelling against social media. It's one of those things that I feel, it's, mentally, I see how it affects my kids. I see how it permeates our society. But I also see how it's really keeping us distant as human beings. We are built to be in a community, to be social. And to me, social media is an oxymoron, because it's not necessarily social. You're, behind a screen or you're on a keyboard. You're not necessarily, having that human to human connection. with people. And so I feel that's what's escaping our society today. So that's what I'm rebelling against. Is I'm trying to build those human to human connections and actually build, communities, as opposed to, being behind a screen or on a keyboard and, all caps and, pray for me and, or, this is, this, that, and the other, spouting my opinions out there in the ether. I feel there's a lot of things that we as human beings wouldn't do face to face, wouldn't say face to face. And that face, a lot of people are not looking each other in the eye anymore. So I'm rebelling against that. I go to the airport now, and if I'm looking at you, I'm gonna keep looking at you. I'm not gonna look away. We're gonna do a stare down game, because a lot of people don't look each other in the eye anymore. So that's what I'm rebelling against, Ned.
Love it. All right, my friend, last question, legacy question. Imagine 30 years from now, you are peering into the homes of your children and you see their lives playing out. What puts a smile on your face, a tear in your eye, knowing I showed up, I did what I was supposed to do? What do you see playing out in those homes?
Oh, great question. I see playing out that the family is still putting God first, because I feel very strongly that had it not been for my spiritual relationship, that I would be divorced, that my kids would be, running around wild and crazy. And so to see that after I'm gone, and peering into my kid's house, that they're at night, saying prayers, with their children, and waking up and getting ready to go to church and not being late, and making that a priority. And then after church, doing something together as a family. Like that to me, is what I would like to see, looking up from above, this peering down into my kids' homes, that they're keeping that strong bond and connection spiritually, because that permeates, family, and community.
Where can people learn more about you? I know you've written a book. What's your book? Tell what your book's about and where people can find it so they can learn more about you.
Oh man, I got 2 books. The first book is The Audacity of Dope and Perseverance. It talks about growing up in a drug addicted family, and persevering, turning that, the audacity of dope and perseverance, just persevering as an individual with, drugs and alcohol in my family. And the second book is Compassion, Consequences, and Criminal Perseverance. And that deals with, the whole thing with the raid, and turning, our family, around from, from the pit, to, where we are today, with that whole experience. So definitely you can find them on Amazon. Just Google my last name, Ron Naulls. Not too many people with my last name, except the famous basketball player Willie Naulls. May he rest in peace. But that's where you can find, my 2 books. Greatly appreciated, man.
Yeah. Love it. Ron, thank you for getting up every day and fighting to be the man God designed you to be, continuing to not settle and pursue life, love your wife, love your kids, and then share that with the world around you. I look forward to staying connected with you, and am grateful for the opportunity for us to be able to connect today. Thank you so much.
Man, likewise. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. It was a blessing, and much success to you in the podcast, Ned. I know it's incredible. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Until next time. What another incredible conversation. I just love Ron's energy. One of the things that stuck out is just this continued reminder that fathers, we get to set the tone in our home. The other thing is around discipline, to really think about how and why you want to discipline your kids. And it will change from age and stage to stage. But leaning into having a conversation with your kids. And I think us dads really need to create margin to be able to sit down and have those conversations and not be so busy that we're moving from thing to thing that we really don't have that time to sit down and spend with our kiddo. My friends, my fathers, thank you for listening to the Fatherhood Field Notes podcast. If this is meaningful to you, please write a review. Take 30 seconds to a minute and just write a review of what this means to you. I want other fathers to find this. I want them to see who they are and operate in their home for the sake of themselves to find fulfillment, as well as there to be fulfillment in the home around family, something that our culture desperately needs. Thank you to all you dads out there listening to Fatherhood Field Notes podcast. What you do matters. Don't be like everybody else. Be yourself. That's who your kids, spouse, and community needs. This is your guide, Ned. Shout together. Let's rebel against the view that fatherhood has little impact and create lives engaged in mastering the craft of fatherhood. I look forward to hanging out with you next time.